Happy Wednesday. Game time picks. Kelly in Vegas here. Joined today by Mark Zeno, Brian Power of Wagertalk.com. We're going to be taking all of your questions. I think we got the Instagram back up. I'm almost positive we have the Twitter back up. And you know that we are always live on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. So if you have a question, drop it in your perspective chat and we will get to it. We've got some NIT games tonight. We've, of course, got Thursday and Friday games. Let's bring the guys in. I'm curious, do either one of you have a futures bet right now that I, only have just a little bit left? We got about, what do we got? 18 hours to tip off that I need to be making.
I have 3 right now. And I kind of broke my own rule, which is I know you're going to get a lesser number once the brackets come out, but I usually don't take futures until the brackets come out, unless I'm like taking a flyer on one in February, right? Like a team that I just think, is starting to impress me. Because what happens is inevitably, it happened to me. My future on Auburn and my future on Iowa State, one of those is now dead because they're in the same bracket. So you can.
Well, they're also both just dead because you could have got better odds after the bracket came out, and they're also both dead because they're going to lose to BYU or UConn.
Oh, stop it! No, they're not. Auburn's going to the Final Four, and then my other one is on Arizona. So those are the. I went with Auburn, Iowa State, and Arizona.
Okay. Well, listen, the Iowa State one, I thought, hey, after they won the Big 12, you probably had incredible value, and then they decided to put them in the group of death. Soccer reference there for BP, because that is exactly what it looks like. That Eastern region looks like a freaking gauntlet. Congrats to whoever makes the Final Four out of that one.
Well, I bet Auburn to win the East region at plus 380. We just dropped this on the Power 5 that came out earlier today on Wager Talk TV. Look, I think honestly, it comes down to Auburn or UConn to win that region. I actually don't like Iowa State. I'm selling on Iowa State. They have the profile historically of a team that's not going to get to the Final Four. As a matter of fact, every single team that came into the year unranked and was seeded 1 or 2 in the tournament, not one of them has made a Final Four in history. 15 of the last 23 have been out. Well, I didn't know they were going to be seeded number 2.
How do you not tell me these things?
Well, maybe you had already made the bet. 15.
Yeah, but BP and I also thought that Baylor was going to win the Big 12, not Iowa State. Yeah, Iowa State comes roaring in like a Mack truck, demolishes my Wildcats, Baylor, Houston. Listen, I'm with BP. I think we're selling Iowa State right now. I do a Calcutta every year. I could not believe. First of all, Iowa State went higher money-wise than 2 1 seeds.
Really?
Make that make sense.
No, that's aggressive.
It never happens that way. Yeah. And that's what go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I wanted to give you one more. But I know you want to finish on Iowa State. Go ahead.
No, I just was more or less saying, I think BP's right. Right now, I'm not saying round 1. I'm not even saying round 2 necessarily I want to sell them, but I'm selling them from a futures perspective. I just don't see this team making a deep run.
And just to finish my point, 15 of the last 23 teams that fit that profile were not ranked in the preseason, are now a top 2 seed. They have lost on opening weekend. So history is against the Cyclones. And Auburn, I know you're not going to want to hear this, Kelly, and I don't like to, one of my, something I would never want to do is anger you. But with UConn, 6 straight national defending champions have lost on the opening weekend of the tournament. Only 4 of the last 15 have even reached the Sweet 16. Of course, there's been no repeat winner since 2007 in Florida. So that is why I am banking on Auburn to win the East.
I tweeted that I thought that BYU had a shot to beat UConn if they get matched up there. We'll see. I mean, obviously they're on the lower end of the bracket, but I could see that in the Elite 8 if it does happen. Here's my one caveat about UConn. I didn't want to back them. I didn't want to take them. It was a Kelly and Murray audience, and our producers let these chalk-eating weasels vote. I was like, no, can we take it? Let's put a cap. It has to be 20, like 25 to 1, something or better, right? Like take a Creighton, take something fun. Nope. Of course, they picked the odds-on favorite. I'm like, oh, come on, man. And then they turned right around and lost to Creighton that weekend. I don't have any faith in this bet whatsoever, especially because they have to face the SEC champion, the Big Ten champion, and the Big 12 champion in order just to get to the Final Four.
Let me give you one more, and I know Brian Power is going to roll his eyes at me when I say this because we've had this conversation about this team several times over, and he doesn't rate them as high as I do. That said, if I had any sort of clarity, and I'll probably fire just a small shekel on it anyway before Friday because they don't play until Friday, but if I had any clarity on the status of Tyler Kolek, I think Marquette is an absolute Final Four team. I have said this to Brian Power over and over again. I think they're every bit as good as UConn. He doesn't believe me. When they have Tyler Kolek and they are healthy, I think that they are that good. And they have such a favorable draw on that side. I think Kentucky gets bounced in the second round. I don't think Kentucky's getting past Texas Tech or NC State. And
I would
Houston
agree.
Houston is as vulnerable as they can come.
Texas Tech is going to throttle NC State. That bottom line right there. But I would agree with you. I think Kentucky will lose in the second round to Texas Tech. I absolutely agree with that.
If Tyler Kolek is healthy, I think they are very, very live to make a Final Four run.
All right, since we have no questions in the chat, let's stick with that side of the bracket, right? There's a couple of games I've heard nobody say a word about. And I know we don't know who Florida's opponent is going to be until we see the play-in games tonight. But I haven't heard one person say a word about the Florida Gators coming out of that side of the bracket, at least from an Elite Eight perspective. I haven't heard. Can you put the bracket back up for me real quick, E? And then that way we can kind of break down through this. I haven't heard one person say anything about Marquette until Mark just mentioned them. Wisconsin, everybody's automatically putting on upset alert to James Madison. Yeah. I have heard nothing about any of these like three teams. Everybody's talking about Kentucky. Everybody's talking about NC State. Nobody actually has even mentioned Duke. Do you guys have, I'm curious as to who you guys have here in the Elite Eight out of the South region.
I mean, look, I will tell you right now, Duke is to me, but I'll give it out for free right here. Duke's a client play for me, 100%. I'm going to lay every bit of those 12. Vermont doesn't even have the athletes to compete with Duke, and they don't have an answer for Kyle Filipowski. The only way that Vermont stays in that game is if Duke just has an awful shooting night. But even at that, all they got to do is feed the ball inside, and Duke should dominate that team. And I think Duke is going to run through either James Madison or Wisconsin. And if James Madison does pull off the upset, again, it's another case where those athletes can't hang with Duke. So I think Duke is an easy shot to advance to the Sweet 16. Again, client play for me in the first round, them against Vermont.
That's interesting because Mark has been on a hell of a college basketball run. Duke was not a game that I even really looked at. I had to call Adam Trigger about Vermont. And then, he talked my ear off for 25 minutes regarding them.
So that was a short conversation.
No, it was not. But it made me just want to not bet the game. I was just like, okay, I'm off this game. I quit this game. But you've been really red hot, Mark. So kind of looking there to see what you're seeing here in this Duke thing, and you think that they run them out of the gym. BP, do you agree? I know you've been doing really well as far as your best bets go. You've been doing really well, 71% this year in college basketball. Is that 4% or higher?
Yes, 4% or higher. We're on the 71% run. I like the under in that Duke Vermont game. If we're just circling that matchup, I think I agree with Mark. Vermont doesn't have the athletes to compete with Duke. This isn't as good a Vermont team as we've seen in previous years.
Right. That's the other.
So it's to me, it's an underplay. I think Duke can have the right. I just think Vermont may struggle to score. This is a very chalky thing to answer your question, Kelly, about who we have coming out of that region. It's Houston for me because I have serious doubts about really everybody else in the region. I am not as high on Marquette as Mark is. Kentucky, they don't play defense, so I can't trust them to win 4 games. Duke, they lost their first conference tourney game. That kind of disqualifies them from going far. And Wisconsin, who I know a couple of weeks ago you called trash, Kelly, on this very program when you and I were doing
the Trash Pandas.
They turned it around a little bit, but I don't trust them to make it far either. I have a lot of respect for Houston and what they do. So Houston would be my pick. I know it's very boring, but I think they're coming out of that region.
I think that makes sense. That's who I have. I have Houston, I have BYU, I have Baylor, and I have Creighton. That is my final 4. It's not beautiful. It's not sexy. It's nothing really great, but I'd have to fill out one bracket. And I never do one for money. I like to do the survivor pools. I like to do the Calcuttas, all of that kind of stuff. But what I really prefer is using it to dictate game script. How am I going to figure out who's upsetting who? Like, obviously, we use KenPom, we use Bartovic, we use all of these other metrics. But at the end of the day, they aren't actually putting in the gauntlet of a schedule that some of these regions are versus others. I would agree with you. Houston has almost, I would say, a cakewalk. I know I never like to say those types of terms, but it looks like a cakewalk into at least the Elite Eight. Some questions from the chat regarding the NIT games tonight. We'll hit those the last 10 minutes. Deal, guys? I know that you guys want it. You guys want some winners for tonight. How about this? Brian Power, Mr. 71%. I need to know, who is your biggest upset for round one? Who's getting upset?
Oh boy, well, I'll tell you what, Kansas ain't looking so good right now, are they?
No kidding.
I mean, this is a short-handed team, and they're going against a deep team in Samford. Now, that line is so short that, honestly, if you're going to play Samford, I wouldn't even take the points. I would just take money line at this point, if you're going to play that. So I think they're kind of the most vulnerable of the top 4 seeds. Believe it or not, Illinois might be in a team you want to sell high on. I'm not saying they're going to lose to Morehead State, but this is a team coming off. Everyone's so high on Illinois because they won the Big Ten tourney. What's happened the last couple of years to teams that have won the Big Ten tourney? Purdue, well, we all remember what happened to them, Mark, last year. We were together at Turning Stone. 2 years ago, Iowa, very similar statistical profile to this Illinois team. Very high offensive efficiency, very bad defensive efficiency. They lost in the first round. Illinois, the run they had in the Big Ten tournament, guys, was not as easy as you think. They only beat Ohio State by 3. They were down to Nebraska big in the semifinal. And the final margin against Wisconsin of 6 points was their largest lead of the game. Morehead State has been kind of sitting, resting, waiting. They won the OVC tournament back on the 9th, I believe, of March. So they'll have been off for 12 days by the time they take on Illinois tomorrow. I think Illinois should be on upset alert tomorrow.
Ooh, that's interesting. I did a 3-team moneyline parlay over at Superbook Sports, and I so desperately wanted to add Charleston. I just could not. I feel like Alabama's going to get lucky. They're going to get a whistle, and they're going to win, and I'm going to be mad. But I do like them plus the points, and I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on the money line. But here's my 3 dogs, and then Mark, we'll get to yours. Grand Canyon to upset St. Mary's. I love that one. I love this Grand Canyon team. Because why? I knew so much about them over the last couple of weeks from our good friend Trig. And then, of course, oh, there we go. Gene wants to know about his 125-1. What's your opinion on how far they can go? Mark disagrees with me, so we'll get into his opinion on your question there, Gene. I also took Northwestern. I think that they pull off the small upset. And then Utah State. There's only 2 teams that I'm selling in the Big 12. Well, I know we talked about selling Iowa State, but I'm not actually truly selling Iowa State. I'm just off of Iowa State. I'm going to sell on Texas and I'm going to sell on TCU. These are just 2 teams that I think that have been overvalued for a better part of the season. Utah State, I know it. They're in the Mountain West. Yes, we did bet on it yesterday. Yes, I know all of the statistics behind the lovely Mountain West, but I think a couple of those trends are going to be broken at least in the first round. And we'll see how that ends up panning out for us. But it is 16-1 over at Superbook Sports. Mark, what say you? I saw your eye roll about me betting against St. Mary's. And Gene would like to know about his futures bet because I don't think he has a cash out button on that. Mark is muted. So BP, while Mark figures out his tech issues.
I'll tell you what, he's a big boy. He can hit a button. All you have to do is hit one button, Mark, and then you can start talking again. Okay.
I'm back.
All right. Oh,
He's
there
back.
he is.
There he is.
I'll tell you what.
Refresh of the screen. You get out of my way, Brian Power. No, look, the 3 teams that I had on
And he
upset.
thinks he's not a meathead, BP, and he thinks.
Yeah.
So before we're going on air, I got to call a timeout. This is my show, so I can. So before we go on air, I'm explaining to him that there are people coming to Turning Stone this weekend that have never met anybody, right? But we're in chats and we gamble and we're all in this like same world. And I'm explaining and I'm like, oh, BP XYZ. And I was like, Zeno's great. I go, but when he gets a few too many, he gets a little meatheady. And he goes, what? And Zeno's like, what do you mean? And Brian Power goes, do we need to show you the videos from Stadium Swim last summer in Las Vegas? Yes. And I just about died. And then you just came bulldozing back in and we're like, BP, like a bully, get out of my way.
My way, BP. All right. Now that we're done making fun of me. Anyway, I agree with you. I agree with you on Charleston, Alabama, just because they play no defense is an upset alert. I also agree with you on Grand Canyon. I mean, here's the thing. And if we learned anything from the game last night, when you are a subpar offensive team, you are always in danger of losing because all it takes is for you to have a little bit of a below average night. For a team that only scores 65, have a below average night and only get to 57, and you can be in trouble because you're not asking the other team to do that much offensively. So I agree with you. But the one that I'll put on upset alert the most is Clemson, right? Like New Mexico, the ACC was way overrated and way overseeded across the board in this tournament with the exception of Duke and North Carolina. Like, really, those are the only two teams that should have been in this tournament from the ACC. But it's the ACC, so the committee can't leave anybody else out. But Clemson is in major danger of losing in the first round to New Mexico. And I'll just give a nod to Brian Power as well because he hates South Carolina. He's hated them all year long that Oregon might upset South Carolina.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a major upset, I would say. By the way, Clemson, New Mexico,
South Carolina, it's my favorite bet.
New Mexico is actually favored over Clemson, so technically that wouldn't even be an upset. But yeah, South Carolina, look, God bless them. I know that they've, my record in college basketball this year, if you took out South Carolina games, it'd be like
you sound like Marco yesterday on the show.
It would be like 80%. South Carolina has been my bogey team this year, but Dana Altman, man, we all know his resume in the NCAA tournament. He can coach. Yeah, I think South Carolina is going down. I'm serious this time.
I am playing against some teams that won their conference tournament. I, for one, have been really great with South Carolina. My Achilles heel is game that you're going to miss tip-off for and CT's going to have your ass is going to be Michigan State, Mississippi State. I have had the wrong read on this team. I was like 0-4, 0-5 right out of the gate, and then they did two nice winners for me. So they kind of mildly redeemed themselves. I know he likes Mississippi State tomorrow. He gave it out last night. Before we get to these NIT games, anything else you guys would like to add for Thursday and Friday?
BP, you can go first.
Oh, what do I want to add for Thursday? I mean, my gosh, you're putting me on the spot here. 32 games, and what do I want to talk about? I would, I agree. Like Mark said, I mean, I gave out the Lobos as well on the Power 5. I think, we need to talk about with the Alabama-Charleston game that both of you guys have mentioned. The total for that game is the highest total in an NCAA tournament in 30 years.
Yep.
173 and a half it's up to. And when I say 30 years, it's because that's only how far back we have data to 95. Like we don't know if there was, 173 and a half, that is a big, big total. And,
do you know how many things have to go right for that thing to go over?
The only thing I would I hear you, Mark. The only thing I would rebut you with was, did you see the Alabama-Kentucky game? Now, I know Charleston doesn't have the athletes Kentucky does, but I told you Alabama-Kentucky, they would combine for over 200 points, which they did. There's also, another total. I know here's a team that Mark hates. Another over that's on the move. San Diego State, UAB, that total has moved 5.5 points. That is a significant move. I don't know if I'd want to bet the over with San Diego State involved, though. Is that I know UAB plays no defense, Zeno. I'll kick this one to you. But San Diego State, is that a team you feel comfortable can take full advantage when the total is moved that much?
Yes. I laid it. There was 3 games that I laid on Sunday night. That was one of them. And then, of course, Texas Tech, which I have a reverse CLV trophy. I laid 6 with Texas Tech.
Let me add this much, and it kind of dovetails a little bit to the San Diego State conversation about just some sort of tactics as you approach this. And BP knows I do this a lot. Kelly, you probably don't like when I do it, but I even do it during college football sometimes. Cut the game in half, guys. To me, there's absolute value in first half unders, especially on Thursday and Friday as teams play their first game. There's a lot of nerves. There's a lot of adrenaline. There's a lot of sort of, teams taking 5 to 7 minutes to get their legs underneath them before they settle in and find an offensive rhythm and things get sloppy. So if there are teams that play a lot of defense, you're going to deal with a first half shorter number. So i.e. if the total was, 140 for the game, instead of getting 70 in the first half, you're only going to get 65. But play those first half unders. It's a system that worked last year. I think it works every year. You just have to kind of look hard at the matchup and figure out what you like. And then I would tell you too, like the same thing with San Diego State and UAB. It's like, with teams like this with big numbers, I always live by the philosophy, and I say it all the time. BP knows this. If they ain't covering early, they ain't covering late. If you got a big number like that, you don't want to lay a 7 or an 8 or whatever it may be. If you can get, and 4 is usually my cutoff for first half spreads. I don't like to play anything above for a favorite, anything above -4, because then we start to get into this weird territory where I need, possibly a third possession if it's not 2 threes that are back to back, where I'm talking about, getting 2 2s past 4, 4.5 would require another possession, and you just don't get the time in college because the shot clock is longer. So if you're going to cut the game in half, if I get a -4 or less, to me, those are comfortable positions to take, like with the San Diego State, where you're only going to have to lay 3 in the first half. I think that's just a viable way to cut the game in half, look for a shorter number, and hope that a team can get off to a fast start and take advantage of a shorter number. So, kind of, Kelly, that's where I sit as you head into Thursday and Friday.
I was trying to find, my buddy tweeted, and of course I didn't screenshot it. He tweeted about these first half unders, something that I want to keep an eye on. If I can find it, guys, I will retweet it later. I'm going to text him. I feel like I'm hallucinating that whole time, Mark. Instead of listening to you, doing my job, I was scrambling because you sent off a literal firebomb in my brain that said, oh my God, I almost forgot about the first half unders. Okay, let's hit these NIT games, little rapid fire. Really quickly, another housekeeping reminder. If anybody wants in, I am doing a March Madness Survivor Pool, splashsports.com/Kelly in Vegas. $25 per entry. You can have up to 100 entries. Hopefully this prize will hit 75,000. I think we're pretty close to almost 1,000 people so far. So we're going to be at least at 25,000. We'll see. In 40 states, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and like South Carolina or something. Michigan can't enter. That being said, let's hit this first NIT game. Boise or Colorado. BP already talked about this. I posted on the Wagertalk Instagram channel. So Mark, you and I'll hit this one. I took 3.5 with Boise when it hit 3.5 earlier. I said this is way too many points at this point in time. I know everybody wants to fade the Mountain West. For all of the data points that have been said, I will say this. I was on Colorado in the game, the final versus Oregon. BP's note said, hey, Oregon needed that game way more than Colorado. That was very factual. I like this Boise State team in that the respect from a defensive standpoint, right? They can defend the 3 ball really well. I really like how they soak up every ounce of the clock. I think that they're really going to be able to exploit Colorado's turnover problem, and hopefully they can shut them down from the 3-point line. Mark Zeno.
Yeah, I mean, I lean Colorado here. Look, they're 8-1 with that one loss being the last game they played in the Pac-12 tournament here. 8-1 overall, 6-3 against the number, and they have the 15th best efficiency margin in Division I against Quad 1 and Quad 2 opponents, and they hold edges over the Broncos in that category. This is a team here in Colorado that is they're a very good catch and shoot team, right? And I think that they're good from the perimeter. It's tough, but I lean Colorado here. I think Boise State can be beaten on the defensive end when it comes to screens and the way that Colorado plays. So it's going to be. I think Colorado finds some offense in this game. I think Boise State got a bad draw. Honestly, like if you had flipped this around and given Boise State either the other 2 opponents, Colorado State or UVA, obviously they would have an easy matchup into the second round. But they probably got the toughest matchup for them with Colorado. I lean Buffaloes here -2.
He must have been listening to the show because he just texted me the tweet. So the tweet is, and it's tournament games delayed by 15 minutes plus. So the first round tournament games, if they're delayed. Last year, the first half went 12-5 to the under. The full game went 11-6 to the under, 23-11. The year prior, not as good. 2021 was when he started keeping records. But last year, those first half unders on the games that were delayed, which is over half of them. I mean, they're always like 10, 15 minutes off, but he says 15 minutes or more delayed. We got 2 more NIT questions in the chat. BP, you said you also liked Colorado, right? Just to confirm.
Yes, I'm on. Yeah, I talked about that on Wager Talk today. Some of the same reasons Mark mentioned. This is a top 20 team in Torvik, guys, over the last month. There's NBA talent. I just think Colorado's a better basketball team. Yes, the line move does scare me. I would not have wanted, 3.5. I talked about with Teddy. I wasn't crazy about laying that anymore. But if you got Colorado under 3, I would feel pretty good about it.
All right, San Francisco, Cincinnati, UNLV, Princeton. I can tell you this, Chris. The first half over was a play at SF Cincinnati. I got that text this morning. Cannot tell you from whom, but I got it. I cannot name any player probably on the Dons outside of Cincinnati. I should be able to, but I have already erased them from my memory. BP, any opinion on either one of these games?
Slightly into San Francisco, I would say. I think they may, the NIT, it's so much about motivation, right, Kelly? You want to find out who's really excited to be here.
We saw that last night.
Yep.
Yeah, last night I had a nice outright winner with Boston College over Providence. Providence was without it. Carter, they were already, of course, without Hopkins. So I was like, wow, I'll take the points with BC. And that worked out well. San Francisco, I just think this is too many points. Cincinnati, all three of us have watched this team play offense at various times during the course of the year. It's not always pretty. And I just think San Francisco taking on a team for the Big 12 is going to be pretty motivated. I struggle to see how Cincinnati wins by margin in that particular contest.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. North Texas. I tailed Dave Koken on them. They just appeared to want it more. My Kansas State Wildcats, a team that definitely did not give a shit. Let it just rain threes. And then they started to give a shit and they cut it within 4. And then they're like, never mind. We don't actually give a shit. We can't stop this dorky white kid that just keeps bombing it from downtown. Mark Zeno, any other opinions in the not in tournament?
Yeah. I mean, as far as those two games that Chris talked about, one, I agree with everything BP said about San Francisco, but also, Cincinnati's offense is like watching Virginia's offense on steroids. They can't make free throws. They're terrible all around. Like, it's just they're an ugly team. Now, they are home. Remember that. So, these are home court games, and I just don't know if you'll get a huge crowd for them, but I agree. San Francisco, kind of the right side there as a team that is very offensive minded. So it's a styles make fights kind of game. UNLV, for me, Kelly, is the same way that Mississippi State was for you. I can't figure this team out. Every time I play against them, they cover. Every time I play on them, they lose. So this is a tough matchup here. It's always going to be a tough matchup against Princeton when it comes to, the Ivy League, because so many teams don't prepare for – it's like preparing for the triple option in college. They just don't prepare for the offense and the backdoor cuts that Princeton runs on a routine basis. And again, UNLV, unfortunately, has to fly all the way across country for this game. So there's nothing geographically – beneficial to them about this one. I would lean Princeton at home in that game.
All right. That one's been bet up as well. All right. At Brian Power _ at Mark Zeno. Both these guys have been an integral part to our successes this football. I'm ready for football. Can you tell? This basketball season here at Wager Talk. You guys have both been crushing the NBA. Mark, 71% college basketball run this week. 8 straight he hit last week in college basketball. He has a 5% play up for tomorrow. That is only his third 5% play of the college basketball season. WT.buzz /MZ. And Brian Power right now has up 7 plays for $29. He's calling it the mega pass, if you will, over on wagertalk.com, WT.buzz /BP. He is on a 71% best bet run in college basketball. So basically, if Brian Power's got a 4 or 5% play, you want it. I think that's it, guys. I'm not doing a show tomorrow because I'm going to sit on my couch all day. Prez had the audacity to ask me if I would come on Wager Talk today. I said, no, Prez. The games are going to be tipping off. I am not coming on Wager Talk today. I got things to do. I got basketball to watch.
I give him credit for taking a shot. It's about all he does.
Well, you know why? Because everybody else already told him no, probably because they also would like to watch said basketball games.
It sounds like a very high-level conversation that I needed no part of.
Yeah.
Smart asses. Make sure you guys both sign up for my Survivor contest, splashsports.com /Kelly in Vegas. Can't wait. You guys have a blast at Turning Stone, and we'll see you guys next week because I'm going to be in Mexico, but I'll figure out who's filling in for me. Have a good one. Good luck on all your March Madness bets.